Hi there. Welcome to the Lifestyle Herbalist podcast, where we hope to bring you a healthy dose of happiness. I'm your host, Dabney Vaccaro, clinical herbalist, health coach, lover of plants.
And I'm Sabrina Cooper, registered culinary holistic nutritionist and herbalist. Join us as we dive into the art of herbalism, mindfulness, and healthy lifestyle practices to help you achieve a happier and healthier life. Whether you're a seasoned herbalist or just starting your wellness journey, we're here to provide you with the insights, tips, and inspiration for a more balanced and joyful existence. So grab your favorite herbal tea, sit back, and let's get a healthy dose of happiness together.
Hey, welcome back. Sabrina and I are here today to talk to you about just some basic ideas of herbalism. We were just chatting a few minutes ago about how people are often confused about where to start in the world of herbalism. And when I talk about, and maybe Sabrina can enlighten us as well, but when we talk about teas with our clients and people on social media and that sort of thing, they often think, well, what do you mean, black tea, green tea? And they think about tea in a tea bag. And what we're talking about is herbalist is a loose leaf tea. And there's ways to extract the medicine with hot water without using the commercial tea bags. Have you found that to be true, Sabrina, in your world of talking to people about just trying to debunk some of the ideas of what teas and herbal teas really are?
I think so because, it's one of the first ways that individuals get to embrace or try herbals, right? Like it's one of the first ways that we introduce them to a lot of people, and when I say, oh, it's a herbal tea, they kind of are like, they don't know what to do with it and they don't understand the concept around it. And I think where it comes from is because we've had the industries of tea turn herbal teas into something more than just an herbal tea by adding additives and other ingredients like little mint flakes, or that will give you that extra boost of minty flavor, or hidden sugars in the tea. And so they take away from, they'll call it herbal in quotations, but it's not technically what we're talking about. And not to say that our teas are bland or anything like that, but it's more of the properties and the medicinal properties that you're going to get from them. And it's getting back to basics. And we decided when we were talking just a minute ago, we're like, now what can we talk about? We started talking about teas and we're like, let's just get back to basics and let people understand what we do as herbalists when we create these teas for different properties.
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes people are somewhat reluctant to try an herbal tea that's a loose leaf tea because you just, the person's looking at it with kind of a crooked eyebrow, wondering, is it going to taste like dirt? Is it going to taste like grass? Like, I don't want to pay this money and then I can't use it or it's not palatable. And that being said, I do offer the premise, and when people ask me how good it tastes or what it tastes like, I usually have to be authentic and say, you know what, I'm an herbalist. I can really palate a lot of different things that I couldn't palate 10 years ago. So I'm not a great one to ask, but I will say I think it's delicious, and these are the notes that I taste, and these are the flavors that I can take in. So, but everyone's taste profile is a little different. Some people can really are super tasters, and they taste like all of the things, the bitter, the sour, the acrid, like they can taste it all. And others really have their profile was they're so used to everything so sweet that if they have any little inkling of bitter, they're like, ugh, ugh, I don't like it because it's not sweet enough. But when you can take your taste profile down a notch and not have sugary things for a period of time, you will actually be able to taste things in a much better light. And you don't need as much sugar, not as much as you think you do, because what we do is we titrate up our sugar intake, and then we need to have things super sweet. Otherwise, it doesn't taste good.
Exactly. And we as herbalists will try and balance out the tea blends with a profile that might be a little more on the sweeter note where it hits on the palate, right? So lemon balm can be a little bit sweeter of a note. Licorice can also be very sweet in a tea.
Mhm.
Um, some people don't love lavender, for example, but maybe they've just been, it's been overpowered, like it's overpowering in the whatever they've had, where we try to make it like not the main note, unless that's the property we're really going for. And then in that case, that person probably wouldn't like the lavender tea, like not everybody's gonna like everything, right? But I
Right.
always say it's kind of like a salad. You build on the salad. If I gave somebody just plain greens in a bowl, they would probably be like, this isn't very good. If I add like some tomatoes, it makes it a little better. And then add in another layer, cucumber, maybe some, whatever, some seeds, pumpkin seeds. That makes it even better. There's that crunch. Now you're starting to get more flavors. And then now I'm going to add like a little pop of dressing on there, some olive oil and some fresh lemon. Wow, like changed the whole little bit
Right.
of lettuce to
Right.
something better. And it's the same with tea. I think for us as herbalists, like you said, our palates start to get stronger where we can take on these different flavors. And some of them are a little more earthy than others, and we can take that on a lot better. But there's some cases where you might want to add your own little bit of sweetness, like a honey or a maple syrup, just a little tad of it to help you get used to certain flavors, right? Before you get onto that flavor profile that we're used to as herbalists and trying and culinary people, right?
Mhm.
So I just think that's a good way to paint the picture on how we build our teas. We kind of have our base notes and we kind of go and put in things. We don't just go like, oh, just think about this. Let's throw everything together and boom. No, we have to make a nice balance.
Right.
Otherwise, we're also
Right.
not treating what we're supposed to be treating as well. So,
Right. Well, and depending on what herb you're using matters on the steeping time. So if you're using
exactly.
a root, the medicine, it's of course it's a much more dense property, and so it takes longer to extrapolate all the medicine from a root or a bark. But if you're using a flower, well, that's very dainty, or a leaf, it doesn't take nearly as long. And I will say, like mint in general, and lemon balm is one of those. If you steep a mint plant or something in the mint family too long, it does tend to get more bitter. So there is that sweet spot where you're like, okay, I'm done steeping. I got to get those herbs out of there, or it's going to start to, get a little more bitter, and then I'm going to have to add some flavoring to try and counter out that bitter. So, you know, how long you steep something matters as well.
For sure, for sure. And like you said, the hardier the herb, the better, the more you want to do it. Like I have a tea that has a lot of dried orange and lemon and things like that. So I always tell people like to get the most out of that tea, to simmer it over
Mhm.
time. It'll actually make
Yeah.
the house smell really nice too. But you want to simmer it as opposed to putting it into a little tea cup thing, like a strainer mesh ball
Mhm.
or a bag, because otherwise you're not going to get the true flavor profile of that tea.
Right.
And it's better if you do that. Also, I say at the end, you could throw in a little fresh, if you have a fresh piece of lemon or orange, throw that in it for actual to pull out even more of the flavor, right? Because that sometimes just makes a huge difference. And like we know, citrus can really change the dynamic of the acidity in a tea or something like that, right? So even just that will give it a little bit of a different flavor. So I just really think that you have to follow the directions of your herbalist or your tea bag, what it says. Don't oversteep it because sometimes you think, oh, more is better. But in the case of herbs, more can be really not so good.
Right. It can be too strong really quick.
Strong, too quick. But even green tea, I mean, I've
Mhm.
had it where I've been like, oh, I walk away from it. We get busy. I'll come back to it. And then it's like, ugh, it has like that, it makes my
Right.
saliva gland really
Mhm.
go because it's so
Mhm.
strong, right?
Mhm.
No different than coffee. Coffee's the same way. You add too much coffee grinds and not enough water, your coffee's going to be too strong. You add too little water or too little coffee to the greater water content, you're going to have a really weak
Right.
coffee. So
Right.
treat it, that's kind of a good scenario in order to think about how to treat tea as well.
Mhm.
Um, but I just love how people like, I mean, you were just saying about what I don't want to throw them under the bus, but someone said about trying your tea. That's up to you if you want to throw that person under the bus. But we can tell the story about what we get all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Over the weekend, I was meeting with a family member and I had given them this family member some of my tea to try, and it was my Sweet Dreams tea. And he said, "Oh, I tried your Sweet Dreams tea the other day and I was surprised it was really good." And I thought for a moment, I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. Like, what do you mean you was actually good? Like, of course it's good. It's herbal. But it had rose in it, it had mugwort, it had lavender, but they were just a little bit of this and that. So you get, like Sabrina said, you don't want something overpowering, but just enough to give it a flavor. But then also to get that relaxing benefit that you're looking for. So it's a sleepy time thing. So it had chamomile in it. It has mugwort, which is really promotes dreams. And it has some other things in there that are just very soothing and relaxing. And anyway, yeah, he said he was really surprised that it tasted good. But then
Definitely.
that started this conversation about like people think herbal tea is like, oh, it's going to taste like dirt or it's going to taste, like grass or something, and it's just not going to be good. And that's not the case. Herbs are, and especially flowers, people are worried about something not tasting sweet enough, but flowers are very, very sweet, very flavorful. So it's a great way to really lighten a tea. Chamomile is it's a beautiful tea, and it's very sweet, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But it's like I think it's just the connotation of like all healthy foods. Like felt healthy foods or healthy things are not going to be tasty, you
Mhm.
know? And I think
Mhm.
that's just like something in a lot of people's mind is that it's just not going to
Yeah.
taste appropriate or good. I mean, I know my husband many a times has said to me like, "Oh, if I ate this all the time, I you could turn me into a vegetarian." And I was like, really, vegetarian food isn't terrible. Like, you know what I mean? So that's same as like it's the same as that family member of yours. It was like,
Mhm.
well, yeah, like it's great. Like it's just the flavors. It's not gonna kill you. Like it's not all about the meat or whatever, right? So
Right.
I just think we make one or two herbs our stars in the show that are there for medicinal purposes or for taste. And then, like I said, we kind of build from there and sometimes if you see, obviously it's like any ingredient package, something that's larger or is in greater quantity is going to be at the beginning of the label, and anything that's in lesser quantity is usually near the end. So that way you can kind of gauge if it does say rose on it, maybe it's not the there's just a hint of it. So you're just going to kind of get that little bit of flavor
Mhm.
if you see it listed at the end of the ingredients. Whereas if you see it right at the beginning and you're not a big fan of rose, then sure, like I would say, not that it doesn't taste good, it's just not your preference because
It's
you're
gonna be
not
a
a big
stronger
fan of
part of it.
rose,
Mhm.
right? And as soon as you smell rose, maybe it is a reminder of something or someone or whatever, and it either can trigger some emotions or it could just be one of those things where you're like, I smell it, I'm not into it, and that's totally fine too. But I mean, when we were talking before the show, we were just talking about the whole prevalence about like saying, oh, someone says like, it just doesn't taste, I'm surprised it tastes good, but it actually will taste good.
It tastes really good. And for people who are just getting started and maybe you don't have all of the tea stuff. And not everyone is a tea drinker. Some people are just coffee drinkers or maybe they just don't like tea or coffee. And for people who some of my clients have just not been a fan of just hot tea. And it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold. The hot water and most times is going to help to extrapolate the medicine from the plant more rapidly than cold water. And there are a couple of plants that do really well, or herbs that do really much better in cold water. But for the most part, it's hot water. But once it's steeped and you're ready, like remove the herbs from it, just put ice in it and have it as an ice beverage if that's your preference, or room temperature. It doesn't have to be hot. And for my clients that, I'm trying to get them to have 4 cups of tea a day, it's like make your whole quart, strain off your herbs, and then just drink it throughout the day. It doesn't have to be hot. Just I'm trying to get the medicine in them. The water is just the vehicle to get the medicine into your body and however way it needs to go. But even just putting it in a mason jar, And then just using like a strainer, just your little, like, not so much like, but you want a fine mesh strainer, just to strain off the herbs into whatever pitcher container that you want to leave it in. You don't have to spend a lot of money in doing this. It can be a mason jar and a strainer.
True. And I also wanted to say that when we were talking about teas,
Hmm.
um, that not only is it about like straining and doing the tea, it's about the quality of the tea. So if you have tried an herbal tea that you just got at your regular grocery store, make sure it's a high quality brand or reach out to an herbalist because you're going to see a difference. One will look almost powdery, where you're not going to maybe get the true essence of the flavors, or you're maybe not sure where the herbs came from when they created this tea, as opposed to someone who knows what they're doing and blends the tea properly, and you'll actually see flowers and you'll see the herbs and the leaves and,
Yep. The
stems
stones,
and things,
everything.
right? You'll see everything where in the other one, you'll just see like a nice powder and it's
Great.
going to be flat. So I would say that's another thing to keep an eye out for your teas. I also, when I sell my teas at farmers market, I find I fare better when I'm selling it in person or at a farmers market when I'm out there, you know, help going to have a booth because I have little containers that you can smell and see.
Mm,
So the person gets to see it, they get to smell
yep.
it. Sometimes I have a sample as opposed to it just sitting on a shelf.
And
People
wondering.
aren't as inclined to see it. Same with posting something. If I post something and I talk about it, people are more apt, and I'm sure you see the same thing, Dabney. If you make a post about our teas and show what it is, people actually are more drawn to the tea because they look pretty, they look more eye appealing. You can tell that we put love and we've put energy into our tea. So it's coming from a good source and we source out everything because what we want for our bodies, we're going to give to you all. So, reputable companies will do that, right? And reputable herbalists. Um, I think that's really, really important note to make because not all things are treated equally.
Oh, for sure. And you don't know where your herbs are coming from. You always want to have an organic herb. You want to be careful of the toxic environment that your plants are in because whatever toxins that plant has in it, you're going to be drinking it in your tea because it's just gonna be released into your water, and you certainly want to minimize the amount of toxic um, chemicals and things that are going through your body as well. So Sabrina's right. You want to go with reputable manufacturers, organic, really good practicing with herbs.
And I know for both of us, that's when we make our tea blends, tinctures, things like that. I mean, we try to be as local as possible, but there are things that we can't grow in our climates here in Canada or in Virginia. So we do have to source them out. And that's when we go to these people or companies, we get like, the background of it all, the toxic reports, things like that, to know what's going into these teas. Otherwise, we wouldn't be putting them out into the world. I know Canada, I'm pretty sure United States too, is pretty stringent on what comes in and goes out. So a lot of these companies here in Canada that are selling the herbs in bulk, they go through a vigorous process in order to get them here. That's why some things are not available here in Canada, but they're available in the United States. Not to say that United States isn't doing their due diligence. It's just them to have different approach to this herb. They have more
Right.
information on it that maybe Canada
Restrictions.
doesn't. They're
Mhm.
not well versed in it. I mean, I did the same thing with essential oils. It was like the one brand, it was like some things were coming out of the United States, but they couldn't be sold in Canada or it had to be different constitutions. You know what I mean? So that's and then sometimes we have to change our formulas because sometimes we can no longer get a herb because, for example, in Canada, they might realize that this herb is doing something really good for you and they may put some sort of restrictions on the herb. So it's a
Oh,
little harder to get.
oh,
This has happened many times, and I'm not, this is the truth. I mean, it's not like a secret, but sometimes if you see things in health food store and all of a sudden you don't see it, it's because now they're doing more investigations and more research on this herb because there's all these claims about the herb, and potentially they just want to make sure it's safe before it goes out. You know what I mean? That's what they say, but we probably know that it is doing some good for certain things, and they're just kind of like, okay, let's tread lightly with this herb. So then we have to change the constituents of our products in order for it to come back. So if you see a product one day and it's gone the next, it's probably because they have to change something within that product. And it happens. It really does happen. Or we just can't get that well-sourced herb anymore, right?
Yeah.
So
The great thing about herbs, though, is that they are not pigeonholed. Like echinacea is more than just, it was been pigeonholed for decades about if you have a cold or getting sick, you take echinacea, but it is so much more than just an immune stimulant. There's chamomile and even
herbalist.
yeah, like hypericum, St. John's wort. Like I use it more as a vulnerary, as a wound healer than I do for relaxation and depression. It's just a wonderful herb just across the board. So, don't let other people pigeonhole herbs because just because you can't get one particular one, there's probably at least a dozen others that will do similar properties.
And it's just, I mean, and tea, like watching the tea, I mean, it's just a process. It's like in some parts of the world, it's a ceremony, and it is like it should be treated like a lot of these herbs are so beneficial, and watching them sometimes just as they steep, as they're sort of changing and transforming, they kind of are whimsical. You kind of can get like mesmerized by it when you're actually watching. And a good one to do is like if you do a sun tea and put some of the herbs, especially hibiscus is one. Like if you
Oh,
do like
yeah.
hibiscus and orange, let's say in the summer, if this is like a really nice kind of like summery drink with maybe some rose, or some lavender, and you just put it into a jar and put it outside in the sun, and you'll start to see it change, and like it eventually become this beautiful red color over time, and that's like a sun tea, and the sun's doing its magic. That
Mhm.
what and all the different, you'll get all the different energies from that, so it's even more powerful. So that's an easy way to steep tea. If you don't want it super hot or super cold, you can just put it outside and then put some ice cubes in it and let the ice melt, and it will eventually stay at
Mhm.
a lukewarm temperature. And when you make a nice tea, and it's refreshing and cooling when you're out in the sun doing your yard work or busy playing with the kids, or after a walk or something. It's just nice to stay hydrated, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even to let the kids watch it, do its magic there in the sunshine in a mason jar is pretty magical. And just, kids get really excited. It's like a science experiment. And I know my 5-year-old grandson right now is all into science experiments. So anything dealing with color, water, like he's all in. So
Right.
it's a very educational process as well.
Yeah. Teas are teas are fun, and that's why I think, I mean, that's how I first started getting into herbals, is like I went to, health food store that was organic health food store, and they had all the jars with the different herbs, but I did my research on what I needed, and then it was kind of like shopping, and I got to like bulk like some of the herbs and then create my own blends, and that's sort of how it all began. So it's fun to like try your flavor profile. You can, and then gifting them to people. I mean, sometimes it's not even just about the tea. I mean, we're on topic of tea, but you can put it into like a little pouch, like, and then put some Epsom salt or some, sea salt or
Oh,
whatever,
yeah,
and put it
yeah.
into the bath, right? Make like a bath salt,
Hmm.
and you put your lavender in there, and then if you don't want it all over the bathtub, and you keep it in this little thing, and you just throw it into the bath. So, and that's your bath steeping and getting the benefits of these herbs, right? So there's many ways to use these herbs, not just in a teacup.
Absolutely. Well, when I usually make my pot of tea in the morning and I add it to my water bottle and I just add the remainder of water. Like it's just a very weak, I guess, concoction of tea and water. But my one of my herbal teachers said, well, I usually tell my clients if you're going to be drinking water, why not drink water that's actually going to be good for
Beneficial.
you and help you support your body. And if it's a weaker amount, then who cares? You're still getting the herbs, you're still getting the benefits of the plant, that's supporting your body and supporting your body's needs. So I've been doing that ever since. Like rarely. I rarely do. I just have just a water bottle that just has water in it. Most of the time it has a tea or, some watered down version of my herbal tea.
Well, and a lot of people do lemon, but it could get a little too acidic for your teeth, for your gut, for everything else. So sometimes it's nice to just have a different flavor, like a mint leaf in there, or even just like you said, some stronger tea that you weakened with the water.
Mhm.
Um, so you're not doing harm and you're actually getting better, more benefits, right? So I think,
Yeah, and it's actually good to mix up your herbs. When we take a prescription medication, especially with like high blood pressure, and diabetes is one of those, is when you take your medication for a certain period of time, like your body kind of gets accustomed to it, and then you need a little bit more. Well, herbs are very similar. It's a very mild kind of deal, but you want to kind of mix up your herbs. Maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can use lemon balm. Maybe Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you can use some chamomile. And that way it kind of keeps your body like, oh, we got something different today. So it doesn't really get used to the certain herb. And so it can be more beneficial if you kind of mix up what you're doing day to day. And even, I mean, even if you want to do like 3 days of lemon balm and then 4 days of chamomile, the point is that you're not going week and months doing the same type of herb. Like your body does get used to it. So like when you're exercising all the time, no longer all that sore because you're doing the same routine. It's always good to kind of mix up your routine to keep your body kind of guessing. And herbs are very similar to that.
good point.
Yeah.
Because I just thinking of the gym when you said that, I was like, yeah, it's a good point. Because you do, like, you just kind of get into that, stuck into that routine. They always say, like, up your weights or
Hmm.
change the routine, or, so you don't want to get too stagnant in whatever you're enjoying, right? And get bored
Yeah.
with it.
Right, because our body's always looking for homeostasis. So if it knows, okay, at 7 a.m. I will get this hit of lemon balm, I know what to do with it now. Like, it's like, okay, here we are. We're just at status quo. But if you add a little bit something to it, like maybe some licorice or maybe some motherwort, then it's like, okay, oh, what's this? We got something new here to deal with. Okay, guys, what are we doing with this? So it kind of keeps your body on its toes.
I love
The
it.
other thing I wanted to mention is that for me, I tend to run a little cooler and a little drier now that I'm after menopause. And so having things like hibiscus can be a little drying for me. So you want to, be thinking about like how can you moisten things up? And like licorice is one of those herbs that kind of moisten things up. Right now I have a yard that is just giving me lots of violet and I put a violet leaf in my mouth and it's so moistening. I'm thinking, man, if I ever had dry mouth, like I'm just going to be just chewing on
Yeah,
violet leaves all the time because it's so moistening and they're so delicious right now. Right, they'll get a little bitter as the summer goes on, but right now they're just so tender and sweet and delicious. But you want to be conscientious about your body type and the type of herb and the type of tea that you're drinking. Because if you notice that your mouth is tasting or feeling a little dry, that herb is probably a little too dry for you. But if you are, run a little more moist, that hibiscus is probably going to be what your body is needing.
true. It's always better. It's always good to consult with someone that is well versed in it. Don't just go off and do your thing, or, as long as you know what you need, then
Mhm.
fine. But if you're not too sure, you can always reach out to us and ask any questions, and we can help you answer those.
Yeah. So if you have questions about teas or herbs or how to actually get started, Sabrina and I are happy to help our listeners just dive into it, even if you just want to put a toe into herbalism, just to check it out. Like we want to be a resource for you, and our email and contact information is in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to answer questions. And maybe one of these days, maybe we'll do a live podcast and maybe just take questions from our viewers who maybe have those lingering. So, there's people that just lurk. They never want to jump in
Yeah.
and
Well,
write
send
anything.
them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a couple, so we said we were going to do a little question and answer, one of our episodes, just to answer some of these questions on together so that we
Mhm.
can get everybody taken care of and
Yeah.
what they want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Sabrina,
So I
anything
hope this
else you
helps.
think we need to talk about or about teas today?
I just, I think we just wanted to we got on that topic. And we're like, hey, let's just push record and talk about this for now. We have some other great guests, a couple guests coming up that will be fun. And I think yeah. If there's anybody else you want to hear or you know of anyone, let us know as well.
That's good. All right. Until next time, take care.